I'd like to begin with a scenario, first of all. This is Rob, and this is Annie. And like 1 in 5 people in the Netherlands, Annie has developed dementia. And what this means is that she finds herself often within the confines of her house, not being able to leave. Rob, as her caregiver, sees this and would like to do everything in his power to make Annie go out again and enjoy her life. So he discovers that Amundsen is providing a compass, a navigation tool that helps people return home safely, and he reserves it. A few months go by, he doesn't hear any email, no message from the founders. Not only does this make Rob very frustrated, but it also, Annie's condition has now worsened to the point where she cannot physically leave her house. This means that the compass is effectively rendered useless. And this is a common problem not only in one, but many dementia households within the Netherlands, and it creates a classic lose-lose scenario between these two parties. So on the one hand, you have dementia households that are operating without any sort of personal information or guidance as to what the compass can do, and they cannot benefit from the autonomy which the compass is proven to give people. And on the other hand, on my client's side, they lack the necessary data for example, for their launch, and because of their size, their support efforts are easily overwhelmed. And all in all, this means that a limited number of lives can be impacted with the compass. And in fact, this is a very common scenario. At about 150 waiting people and close to 1,000 more interested ones, over the past 107 emails, 65% of them have been informational queries. For example, what's the pricing? What does the delivery timeline look like? How's the production coming along? And this begs the question, how do you even start designing for a better communication system between these two hubs? Let's take a look at what Amundsen has to choose from. Here you have a very classic solution that is widely implemented in most businesses. The way the workflow works is you take every single company information that you have, you put it into a knowledge base, and then you ask the latest state-of-the-art models, Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, to draft you a response for this inquiry. Few problems with that. Not only are you sharing sensitive health data with these AI service providers, but, and this was a sentiment, this is too manual. So I said, okay, why don't we increase the level of automation? This brings me to Amundsen's second solution to choose from. This is a build that I did back in my B31 for the internship. It's a very simple 2-part automation system with one part classifying the emails, another using OpenAI to draft responses. And the problems there became very apparent very quickly. Not only does this hallucinate very much, but the context window is low. You have only about 150 or 200 words that are controlling basically every single output. And this obviously also leads to that misinformation. And the question of data security is still unresolved. I was still using OpenAI's text completion models in order to complete draft responses, basically. So, what definitive criteria must we meet in order to make this work? Well, we cannot afford any kind of hallucination. And this also de facto means that we cannot use any AI at all, because AI is prone to these sort of hallucinations in the first place. So also we need to take a look at stepping down from automation and instead introducing a layer of human input into the system. And we need a clear view of what data is going in and what data is coming out of the system. This leads me to the block retrieval system, which lies at the core of the design artifact of this project. The way it works is that an incoming email is recognized on sort of keywords, and this is then matched against a list of existing categories and subcategories that have been classified by humans. And then the system basically looks at the flip side of these subcategories and sees the answers that have been written for these subcategories, also drafted by humans. And then the user of the system has the option to add them into a response body and then add last customizations and personalizations. Let's take a look at what it took to get here, the iterations that I went through. So first of all, I had a Wizard of Oz, which was basically me analyzing how have humans in the past, how the two founders specifically in the past answered emails. So what I did was have a bunch of question and answer sets, and then basic classification that I just made just by seeing patterns. Next, I wanted to focus on matching an incoming query. How can I best match it with its category? And for that, I used vector embeddings, and I experimented with a few models. But the question here was, in this example email, does it also work for the handicap sector? And I wanted to understand, to see if the model can identify these correctly. And as you can see, that was quite successful, and it did also match the correct query with the category. Next, I included some UI elements that improved the made the artifact more ready for delivery, and also added the copy function with the actual response itself. So in the last one you saw, it was just the categories. This one includes a response and a much more dynamic user interface. And then for the last iteration, I sort of close the information loop, and what this basically means is I give the founders a way of seeing what data comes in, and then also giving them the chance to actually add the data themselves, so thereby improving the system and improving the recommendations that they get on the front end. I'd like to speak about the design process next. So I personally found the double diamond to be extremely useful. Not only is this very useful when you're communicating with non-expert stakeholders like businesses, but also it also employs a sort of problem-first approach, where you go from problem space to solution space, and then also diverging and then converging. And this helped me sort of ground each activity into a measurable goal that I could work against. However, what the double diamond lacked was these micro moments of reflection, and that's where the RTDP, or reflective transformative design process, comes in. I find that the double diamond sort of helped me track an overall project view, whereas using these make, validate, reflect loops, for example, in the weekly meetings that I had, I was able to iterate and just get my next steps a bit more clear. Very quickly, going through each of the phases for discovery, I identified certain questions that I had when I was looking at this problem, and then I split them up into who could help me, or which expert can help me answer these questions. I did a total of 5 semi-structured stakeholder interviews, and then simultaneously also did a impact analysis of, okay, how many of the queries are about partnerships, pricing, and the different categories basically, and what is the actual impact on the business, so in terms of churn. The interviews also reinforced the fact that I had to make my system human-controlled. I had to make it very trustworthy from a user perspective, and also focus on giving the right responses to the end users. For development, I experimented between a few different embedding models for the core technology of this artifact, so for example OpenAI and Gemini. However, I noticed very quickly that at the time of presenting this, 52 entries, it does not really matter which model you use in terms of confidence, so I saw a lot of discrepancy between the cosine similarity and the confidence, and that also resulted in me dropping the confidence score at the end for the final iteration. Speaking of which, a user study was done ahead of the final iteration, and this allowed me to see certain things that I missed in the iteration before, which was, for example, customizable intro-outro messages, parts of the email, or a field for composing the email itself, and then also adding a flow for what if a category is not in the predefined options. So to sum up, Almonds now has a human-centered communication platform that assists its end users by giving them accurate and timely information. And that concludes the sort of project portion of my presentation.